The Anzick site mystery holds the key to unraveling the enigmas of America's ancient past. This 12,700-year-old burial site in Montana has yielded clues that challenge our understanding of the first human migrations to the Americas. In the vast expanse of the Great Plains, where the rolling hills of Montana stretch towards the horizon, lies a region steeped in history and shrouded in mystery. On a ranch near Wilsall, Montana, a pair of amateur archaeologists, Harold and Helen Anzick, stumbled upon an ancient burial site while excavating a sandstone outcropping on their property. The couple's curiosity had been piqued by the presence of prehistoric artifacts scattered across their land, and they had spent countless hours scouring the terrain for signs of past human habitation. As they carefully brushed away the dirt and debris from the outcropping, they uncovered a cache of ancient stone tools and a human skeleton, later dated to around 12,700 years ago. The Anzick site, as it came to be known, was situated in a picturesque valley surrounded by towering rock formations, their weathered surfaces bearing testament to the region's tumultuous geological history. The site itself was nestled near a small creek, which had carved out a narrow channel over millennia, providing a reliable source of water for the area's earliest inhabitants. As news of the discovery spread, archaeologists from across the country flocked to the site, eager to unravel the secrets hidden beneath the Montana soil. One such researcher was Dr. Larry Laren, a seasoned archaeologist with a passion for unraveling the mysteries of North America's ancient past. Laren had spent years studying the prehistory of the Great Plains and was well versed in the complexities of the region's cultural and environmental landscape. As he began to excavate the site, he realized that the Anzick burial was not an isolated find, but rather part of a larger archaeological complex, replete with artifacts and features that would challenge prevailing theories about the peopling of the Americas. The excavation process was painstakingly slow, with Laren and his team meticulously documenting every aspect of the site, from the stratigraphy of the soil to the distribution of artifacts. As they delved deeper into the earth, they encountered a plethora of stone tools, including fluted projectile points, scrapers, and knives, all crafted with remarkable precision by the site's ancient occupants. The presence of these tools, coupled with the discovery of human remains, sparked a flurry of questions about the identity and origins of the people who had once called this place home. As the excavation at the Anzick site progressed, Dr. Laren's team made a remarkable discovery that would shed new light on the lives of the people who had inhabited this region over 12,000 years ago. Amidst the carefully layered soil and artifacts, they found a cache of red ochre, a vibrant iron oxide-based pigment that had been used by ancient cultures for ceremonial, artistic, and possibly even spiritual purposes. The presence of this ochre, coupled with the discovery of other ritualistic artifacts, suggested that the Anzick site was not merely a utilitarian burial ground, but rather a complex ceremonial center where the region's earliest inhabitants had gathered to honor their dead and connect with the natural world. The team's findings were further bolstered by the discovery of a series of stone tools that exhibited a level of craftsmanship and sophistication previously unseen in North American archaeology. The fluted projectile points in particular were remarkable for their precision and beauty, with some examples featuring delicate serrations and exquisite basal thinning. These tools, crafted from high-quality materials such as agate and jasper, spoke to the skill and artistry of the site's ancient occupants, who had clearly possessed a deep understanding of the regional geology and the properties of the materials they worked with. As news of the Anzick site's discovery spread, the archaeological community began to take notice of the site's potential to reshape our understanding of the peopling of the Americas. One researcher who was particularly drawn to the site was Dr. Robson Bonnickson, a renowned archaeologist and expert in the field of Paleoindian studies. Bonnickson had spent years studying the earliest human migrations to the Americas, and he saw the Anzick site as a crucial piece of the puzzle, one that could help to clarify the relationships between different Paleoindian groups and shed light on the complex cultural and technological dynamics that had shaped the continent's early history. Bonnickson's involvement in the project marked a significant turning point in the research as he brought his expertise in Paleoindian archaeology to bear on the site's artifacts and features. Through a combination of meticulous excavation, laboratory analysis, and comparative study, Bonnickson and his colleagues began to build a detailed picture of the Anzick site's occupants, including their technological capabilities, subsistence strategies, and cultural affiliations. The team's research was painstaking and exhaustive, involving the analysis of thousands of artifacts from stone tools and projectile points to ceramic shards and other cultural residues. One of the most significant breakthroughs came when Bonnickson's team discovered a series of hearths and fire pits at the site, which provided valuable insights into the daily lives and subsistence practices of the Anzick site's occupants. The hearths, which dated back over 12,000 years, were found to contain the remains of charred plants and animals, including extinct species such as mammoths and bison. These findings suggested that the site's ancient inhabitants had been highly adaptable and resourceful, able to thrive in a challenging environment through a combination of hunting, gathering, and possibly even early forms of agriculture. The discovery of the hearths and fire pits also sparked a renewed interest in the site's geomorphology and the regional environmental context in which the Anzick site's occupants had lived. Researchers began to study the site's sedimentary layers, searching for clues about the region's paleoclimate and the ways in which the environment had changed over time. This research, which involved the analysis of pollen records, sediment cores, and other geological data, helped to build a detailed picture of the regional ecosystem during the late Pleistocene era, including the types of plants and animals that had inhabited the area and the ways in which the climate fluctuated over time. As researchers delved deeper into the site's geomorphology, they began to collaborate with paleoclimatologists to reconstruct the regional environmental context during the late Pleistocene era. One such expert, Dr. Patricia Fall, a renowned paleoclimatologist from the University of Arizona, joined the research team to analyze the sediment cores and pollen records from the site. Her work involved studying the fossilized plant remains and sedimentary layers to determine the types of vegetation that had existed in the area during the time of the Anzick site's occupation. By examining the pollen records, Fall was able to identify a mix of grasses, shrubs, and trees that had thrived in the region, including species such as sagebrush, juniper, and pine. The analysis of sediment cores also provided valuable information about the regional hydrology during the late Pleistocene era. Researchers discovered that the site had been located near an ancient lake or wetland, which would have provided a reliable source of water for the Anzick site's occupants. This finding was significant, as it suggested that the site's inhabitants had deliberately chosen to settle in an area with access to a stable water source, which would have been essential for their survival. The presence of aquatic species, such as fish and mollusks, in the sediment cores further supported this theory, indicating that the site's occupants had likely exploited these resources as part of their subsistence strategy. The study of the site's geomorphology also led researchers to investigate the regional geology and its potential impact on the Anzick site's occupation. Dr. Richard Smith, a geologist from the University of Montana, joined the research team to examine the site's geological context and identify potential sources of raw materials that may have been used by the site's occupants. His work involved studying the local rock formations and identifying areas where high-quality stone, such as agate and jasper, could be found. By analyzing the geochemical composition of the stone tools and comparing them to the regional geology, Smith was able to determine that many of the tools had been crafted from local materials, suggesting that the Anzick site's occupants had been skilled at exploiting their regional resources. As the research team continued to analyze the site's artifacts and features, they began to develop a more nuanced understanding of the Anzick site's cultural and technological context. The discovery of a series of caching pits, which contained stores of stone tools and other cultural materials, suggested that the site's occupants had been highly organized and planned for the future. These caching pits, which were often located near the hearths and fire pits, would have allowed the site's inhabitants to store valuable resources and retrieve them as needed, providing a level of economic security and stability. The presence of these caching pits also raised questions about the social organization and cultural practices of the Anzick site's occupants, including their systems of sharing and reciprocity, which would be explored in further research. The analysis of the caching pits and their contents also led researchers to investigate the site's spatial organization and layout. Dr. Mary Lou Larson, An archaeologist from the University of Wyoming joined the research team to study the site's architecture and identify patterns of activity and use. Her work involved mapping the site's features and artifacts in 3 dimensions, using a combination of traditional excavation methods and cutting-edge technologies such as ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography. By analyzing the site's spatial organization, Larson was able to identify areas of high activity, such as the hearths and caching pits, and areas of lower activity, which may have been used for more specialized or ritualistic purposes. As Larson's spatial analysis of the Anzick site progressed, she began to identify a pattern of deliberate placement of artifacts and features, suggesting a high degree of planning and organization among the site's occupants. The caching pits, for example, were consistently located near the hearths and fire pits, indicating a strong connection between food storage and preparation. Furthermore, the distribution of stone tools and other cultural materials within the caching pits revealed a clear hierarchy of access and control, with certain individuals or groups having preferential access to these resources. To further explore this phenomenon, Larson collaborated with Dr. Larry Conyers, a specialist in archaeological geophysics from the University of Denver, to conduct a comprehensive survey of the site using ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography. These non-invasive techniques allowed the researchers to map the subsurface features of the site in unprecedented detail, revealing a complex network of buried pits, tunnels, and other cultural features that had previously gone undetected. One of the most significant discoveries to emerge from this survey was the presence of a large communal storage pit located near the center of the site. This feature, which measured over 10 meters in diameter and 2 meters in depth, was found to contain a vast array of artifacts, including stone tools, ceramics, and food residues. The sheer scale and diversity of the contents suggested that this pit had served as a central hub for food storage and distribution, and may have played a key role in the site's social and economic organization. To better understand the nature and function of this communal storage pit, Larson and Conyers enlisted the expertise of Dr. Mary Mullaney, a paleoethnobotanist from the University of Calgary. Mullaney's analysis of the plant remains recovered from the pit revealed a surprising diversity of species, including several types of corn, beans, and squash, as well as wild plants such as sunflowers and goosefoot. The presence of these crops, which were staple foods for many prehistoric cultures in North America, suggested that the Anzick site's occupants had been skilled farmers who had cultivated and managed a complex agricultural landscape. As Mullaney delved deeper into her analysis, she began to identify subtle patterns and variations in the plant remains that hinted at a more nuanced and dynamic relationship between the site's occupants and their environment. For example, the presence of certain weed species, such as lamb's quarters and pigweed, suggested that the site's fields had been subject to periodic flooding and disturbance, which would have required careful management and adaptation by the farmers. Similarly, the discovery of charred plant remains in the communal storage pit indicated that the site's occupants had practiced a form of fire agriculture, using controlled burns to clear land, promote soil fertility, and enhance crop yields. These findings, in turn, led Mullaney to collaborate with Dr. R. Scott Anderson, a paleoecologist from the University of Wyoming, to reconstruct the environmental context of the Anzick site during the late Pleistocene era. Anderson's analysis of sediment cores and other geological data revealed that the site had been located within a dynamic and rapidly changing landscape characterized by shifting climate patterns, fluctuating lake levels, and periodic floods and droughts. By examining the fossilized plant and animal remains preserved in these sediments, Anderson was able to reconstruct a detailed picture of the site's ecological history, including the types of vegetation that had dominated the landscape, the animals that had inhabited the area, and the ways in which the site's occupants had adapted to and influenced their environment. As the research team continued to refine their understanding of the Anzick site's environmental context, they began to identify a complex interplay between human activity, climate change, and ecological dynamics. For example, the presence of certain animal species, such as bison and pronghorn antelope, suggested that the site's occupants had been skilled hunters who had exploited the local fauna for food and other resources. However, The discovery of fossilized remains from these animals in the sediment cores also revealed a pattern of population decline and fragmentation, which may have been driven by climate change, overhunting, or other human activities. To further explore this phenomenon, Anderson collaborated with Dr. Christopher Wolfe, a specialist in paleozoology from the University of Colorado, to conduct a comprehensive analysis of the faunal remains recovered from the site. Wolfe's study revealed a surprising diversity of species, including several types of mammals, birds, and reptiles, which had been present in the area during the late Pleistocene era. By examining the age structures, sex ratios, and other characteristics of these populations, Wolfe was able to reconstruct a detailed picture of the site's ecological dynamics, including the ways in which human activity had influenced the local fauna and the responses of these populations to environmental change. As Wolfe delved deeper into his analysis of the faunal remains, he began to notice a fascinating pattern of seasonal migration and habitation among the animal populations. The presence of certain species, such as the pronghorn antelope, suggested that the site's occupants had been aware of and adapted to the annual migrations of these animals, potentially even manipulating their movements through clever hunting strategies. To further explore this hypothesis, Wolfe collaborated with Dr. Marcel Kornfeld, a renowned expert in Paleolithic hunting practices, who had spent years studying the archaeological records of similar sites across North America. Kornfeld's examination of the Anzick site's lithic assemblage revealed a remarkable array of stone tools, including finely crafted projectile points, scrapers, and knives. The presence of these tools, combined with the faunal evidence, suggested that the site's occupants had been skilled hunters who had developed a sophisticated understanding of the local ecosystem. By analyzing the wear patterns and residue on these tools, Kornfeld was able to reconstruct the specific hunting strategies employed by the Anzick site's inhabitants, including the use of drive lanes, ambush points, and other clever tactics. One of the most intriguing aspects of Kornfeld's research was his discovery of a unique type of stone tool, known as a uniface, which had been previously unknown in North American archaeological contexts. The uniface, characterized by its distinctive single-sided edge, seemed to have been specifically designed for processing and butchering large game animals such as bison and elk. To learn more about the origins and significance of this enigmatic tool, Kornfeld turned to Dr. George Frisson, a veteran archaeologist with decades of experience studying the prehistoric cultures of the Great Plains. Frisson's expertise in the field of lithic analysis proved invaluable, as he was able to provide a detailed context for the uniface within the broader framework of North American prehistory. By comparing the Anzick site's uniface to similar tools found at other sites across the region, Frisson was able to demonstrate a clear pattern of cultural exchange and technological diffusion among the ancient populations of the Great Plains. This, in turn, raised important questions about the social and economic dynamics of these prehistoric societies, including their trade networks, migration patterns, and overall way of life. To explore these issues further, Frisson collaborated with Dr. Linnea Sundstrom, a specialist in the archaeology of pre-contact Native American cultures. Sundstrom's research focused on the symbolic and ritual aspects of the Anzick site's material culture, including the intricate patterns of personal adornment and ceremonial artifacts that had been recovered from the site. By analyzing these artifacts within their broader cultural context, Sundstrom was able to shed new light on the spiritual and cosmological beliefs of the Anzick site's inhabitants, revealing a complex and nuanced worldview that was deeply connected to the natural environment. One of the most striking examples of this symbolic expression was the discovery of a beautifully crafted beadwork fragment composed of hundreds of delicate hand-drilled stones. The beadwork, which had been carefully reconstructed by Sundstrom and her team, seemed to depict a stylized image of a bison or elk surrounded by intricate patterns and motifs that were reminiscent of later Native American art traditions. To better understand the significance of this remarkable artifact, Sundstrom turned to Dr. James Kaiser, a renowned expert in the rock art and symbolism of pre-contact Native American cultures. Kaiser's examination of the beadwork fragment revealed a fascinating connection to the rock art traditions of the Great Plains, particularly the distinctive styles found in the Columbia River Plateau region. The stylized image of the bison or elk, surrounded by intricate patterns and motifs, seemed to be a precursor to the more complex and nuanced designs that would emerge in later Native American art traditions. To further explore this connection, Kaiser turned to Dr. David Lewis, a renowned expert in the rock art and archaeology of the Columbia River Plateau. Lewis's research had focused on the ancient cultures of the region, including the Nez Perce and Cayuse tribes, who had developed a rich tradition of rock art and symbolism. By comparing the Anzick site's beadwork to the rock art found in the Columbia River Plateau, Lewis was able to demonstrate a clear cultural affinity between the two regions, suggesting that the Anzick site's inhabitants may have had trade or migration connections with the tribes of the plateau. This, in turn, raised important questions about the mobility and exchange networks of prehistoric populations in North America. To investigate these questions further, Lewis collaborated with Dr. S.K. Willerslev, a leading expert in ancient DNA analysis. Willerslev's team had been working on a comprehensive genetic study of ancient human remains from across North America, including the Anzick site. By analyzing the DNA of the Anzick site's inhabitants, Willerslev's team was able to shed new light on their population history and migration patterns, revealing a complex picture of genetic exchange and admixture with other ancient populations. One of the most significant discoveries to emerge from this research was the presence of a previously unknown genetic component in the Anzick site's DNA, which seemed to be related to the ancient populations of East Asia. This finding sparked a lively debate among researchers about the possibility of prehistoric migration from Asia to the Americas via the Bering Land Bridge and the potential role of the Anzick site's inhabitants in this process. To explore this hypothesis further, Willerslev turned to Dr. Morten Rasmussen, a specialist in ancient DNA analysis and population genetics. Rasmussen's research had focused on the genetic history of indigenous American populations, including the timing and route of their initial migration to the Americas. By analyzing the Anzick site's DNA in conjunction with other ancient and modern genomes from across the Americas, Rasmussen was able to reconstruct a detailed picture of the population history and migration patterns of prehistoric Americans, revealing a complex and dynamic process that had shaped the genetic landscape of the continent over thousands of years. As Rasmussen delved deeper into the data, he began to notice an intriguing pattern of genetic similarity between the Anzick site's inhabitants and certain modern Native American populations, including the Ojibwe and Cree tribes of Canada. This finding suggested that the Anzick site's inhabitants may have had a direct genetic legacy in these modern populations, potentially even contributing to their ancestral gene pool. To explore this connection further, Rasmussen turned to Dr. Jennifer Raff, a specialist in Native American genetics and population history. Raff's expertise in Native American genetics and population history proved invaluable as she delved into the genetic data from the Anzick site and compared it to modern Native American populations. She began by analyzing the mitochondrial DNA, which is passed down from mother to child, and found that the Anzick site's inhabitants had a distinct mtDNA haplogroup that was also present in some modern Native American populations, including the Ojibwe and Cree tribes. This suggested a possible maternal lineage connection between the ancient population and these modern groups. To further explore this connection, Raff turned to the work of Dr. Deborah Bolnick, a geneticist who had studied the mtDNA of indigenous American populations. Bolnick's research had shown that many Native American populations have a unique mtDNA haplogroup called A2, which is thought to have originated in Asia and was brought to the Americas via the Bering Land Bridge. Raff compared the Anzick site's mtDNA data to Bolnick's dataset and found that the ancient population shared this A2 haplogroup with many modern Native American populations. This finding sparked a new line of inquiry as Raff and her team sought to understand the implications of this genetic connection. They began to investigate the possibility that the Anzick site's inhabitants may have been part of a larger migration event that brought people from Asia to the Americas. To explore this hypothesis, they turned to the work of Dr. David Meltzer, an archaeologist who had studied the peopling of the Americas. Meltzer's research had focused on the archaeological evidence for human migration to the Americas, including the presence of Asian-derived artifacts and technologies in early American sites. He had argued that the initial migration to the Americas likely occurred via the Bering Land Bridge, which connected present-day Russia and Alaska during the last ice age. Raff and her team compared the genetic data from the Anzick site to Meltzer's archaeological findings and found that the two lines of evidence were consistent with each other. The genetic data suggested that the Anzick site's inhabitants had a close genetic relationship with modern Native American populations, which was consistent with the idea that they were part of a larger migration event. The archaeological evidence, meanwhile, provided a timeline for this migration event, suggesting that it occurred sometime between 15,000 and 20,000 years ago. As Raff and her team continued to analyze the data, they began to piece together a more detailed picture of the population history of the Americas. One of the key questions they sought to answer was how the Anzick site's inhabitants fit into the broader context of Native American population history. To address this question, they turned to the work of Dr. Ripan Malhi, a geneticist who had studied the genetic diversity of indigenous American populations. Malhi's research had shown that many Native American populations have a complex genetic history, with evidence of multiple migrations and admixture events. Raff and her team compared the Anzick site's genetic data to Malhi's dataset and found that the ancient population had a unique genetic profile that was distinct from other Native American populations. However, they also found that the Anzick site's inhabitants shared certain genetic characteristics with other ancient American populations, such as the Clovis culture, which was known for its distinctive stone tools and artifacts. This finding suggested that the Anzick site's inhabitants may have been part of a larger cultural and genetic network that spanned much of North America. To explore this hypothesis further, Raff and her team turned to the work of Dr. Michael Waters, an archaeologist who had studied the Clovis culture and its relationship to other ancient American populations. Waters' research had focused on the technological and cultural similarities between the Clovis culture and other ancient American populations, including the Anzick site's inhabitants. He had argued that these similarities were evidence of a broader cultural exchange network that existed in ancient North America, which may have facilitated the spread of ideas, technologies, and genes across the continent. As Raff and her team delved deeper into the data, they began to uncover more evidence of this cultural and genetic exchange network. They found that the Anzick site's inhabitants had a unique combination of genetic and cultural characteristics that were not found in other Native American populations, but which were similar to those found in certain ancient American sites, such as the Topper site in South Carolina. The Topper site was known for its distinctive stone tools and artifacts, which were similar to those found at the Anzick site. Waters' research had suggested that the Topper site may have been part of a larger cultural complex that spanned much of eastern North America, and which may have been connected to the Clovis culture and other ancient American populations. As Raff and her team continued to analyze the data from the Anzick site, they decided to collaborate with Waters to further explore the connection between the Anzick site and the Topper site. Waters had previously conducted research at the Topper site, which is located in Allendale County, South Carolina, and had discovered evidence of human habitation dating back to around 16,000 years ago. The site is known for its unique assemblage of stone tools, including blades, scrapers, and flakes, which are similar to those found at the Anzick site. To better understand the relationship between the two sites, Raff and Waters decided to conduct a comparative analysis of the stone tools found at each site. They worked with Dr. Thomas Hurt, a lithic analyst from the University of Wyoming, who had extensive experience in analyzing stone tools from Paleoindian sites. Hurt's analysis revealed that the stone tools from the Anzick site and the Topper site shared many similarities, including the use of similar raw materials, such as high-quality chert and quartzite, and the presence of similar tool types, such as blades and scrapers. The team also discovered that the stone tools from both sites showed evidence of being made using similar techniques, such as flaking and grinding. These findings suggested that the people who created the stone tools at the Anzick site and the Topper site may have shared a common cultural heritage or had exchanged ideas and technologies with one another. To further explore this possibility, Raff and her team decided to conduct a more detailed analysis of the genetic data from the Anzick site. They worked with Dr. Malhi, who had previously analyzed the genetic diversity of indigenous American populations, to see if they could find any evidence of genetic exchange between the people who lived at the Anzick site and those who lived at other Paleoindian sites, such as the Topper site. Malhi's analysis revealed that the Anzick site individuals did indeed share some genetic similarities with other ancient American populations, including those from the Topper site and other sites in eastern North America. These findings suggested that there may have been a network of genetic exchange and cultural interaction that spanned much of North America during the Paleoindian period. To better understand the scope and timing of this exchange network, Raff and her team decided to conduct a more comprehensive analysis of the genetic data from multiple Paleoindian sites. They collaborated with researchers from across North America, including Dr. Deborah Bolnick from the University of Texas, who had worked on the genetic analysis of ancient DNA from multiple sites in the Americas. Together, they assembled a large data set of genetic information from Paleoindian sites, including the Anzick site, the Topper site, and other sites in eastern North America, such as the Meadowcroft Rock Shelter in Pennsylvania and the Cactus Hill site in Virginia. The analysis of this dataset revealed a complex pattern of genetic exchange and population movement during the Paleoindian period, with evidence of multiple migrations and interactions between different groups. The team's findings suggested that the peopling of the Americas was a more complex and dynamic process than previously thought, involving multiple waves of migration and genetic exchange between different populations. As Raff and her team continued to analyze the data, they began to uncover more evidence of this complex population history, including signs of genetic exchange between Paleo-Indian groups and other ancient American populations, such as the archaic peoples who lived in eastern North America after the Paleoindian period. To further explore this aspect of the story, Raff and her team decided to collaborate with Dr. David Anderson, an archaeologist from the University of Tennessee, who had worked on the archaeology of the Archaic period in eastern North America. Anderson's research had focused on the cultural and technological changes that occurred during the transition from the Paleoindian to the Archaic period, including the development of new stone tool technologies and the emergence of more complex societies. As Raff and her team delved deeper into the genetic data from the Anzick site and other Paleoindian sites, they began to notice an intriguing pattern of genetic affinity between the ancient individuals and modern-day Native American populations. Specifically, they found that the Anzick 1 individual, a 12,600-year-old skeleton discovered at the site, shared a significant amount of genetic material with present-day indigenous groups from the western United States, such as the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes of the Flathead Nation. To further explore this connection, Raff and her team collaborated with Dr. Ripon Malhi, a geneticist from the University of Illinois, who had worked extensively on the genetics of Native American populations. Malhi's research had focused on the mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosome diversity of indigenous groups in the Americas, and he had developed a comprehensive dataset of genetic samples from modern-day Native American communities. Together, they conducted a comparative analysis of the Anzick 1 genome and the genetic data from modern-day Native American populations. The results revealed a striking pattern of genetic continuity between the ancient individual and present-day indigenous groups, suggesting that there was a direct ancestral link between the two. This finding was significant, as it provided evidence for the long-standing hypothesis that the initial human migration to the Americas occurred via the Bering Land Bridge, and that the descendants of these early migrants had persisted in the region over thousands of years. The team's research also shed light on the population dynamics of the Paleoindian period, revealing a complex pattern of migration, genetic exchange, and population replacement. For example, they found that the Anzick 1 individual belonged to a distinct mitochondrial DNA haplogroup, D4H3A, which is rare in modern-day Native American populations. This suggested that the ancient individual's maternal lineage may have gone extinct or been replaced by other lineages over time. To better understand the demographic history of the Paleoindian period, Raff and her team turned to the expertise of Dr. Jennifer Raff, a biological anthropologist from the University of Kansas, who had worked on the paleodemography of ancient human populations. RAS research had focused on the analysis of skeletal remains from archaeological sites, using techniques such as stable isotope analysis and osteological analysis to reconstruct the diets, mobility patterns, and population structures of ancient human groups. Together, they conducted a comprehensive analysis of the skeletal remains from the Anzick site and other Paleoindian sites, using a combination of osteological and isotopic analysis to reconstruct the lives of these ancient individuals. The results provided valuable insights into the demographic history of the Paleoindian period, revealing a complex pattern of population movement, genetic exchange, and cultural interaction that spanned thousands of years. As the team's research continued to unfold, they began to explore the implications of their findings for our understanding of Native American history and identity. They collaborated with indigenous scholars and community leaders, such as Dr. Rosalind Lapierre, a historian and member of the Blackfeet Nation, who had worked on the cultural and historical significance of the Anzick site and other Paleoindian sites. Together, they developed a nuanced understanding of the complex and multifaceted history of Native American communities, one that acknowledged the deep-time roots of indigenous cultures in the Americas, while also recognizing the dynamic and adaptive nature of human societies over time. The team's research highlighted the importance of collaborative and community-based approaches to scientific inquiry, particularly when working with sensitive or culturally significant topics such as human remains and indigenous heritage. Dr. Rosalind Lapierre, a historian and member of the Blackfeet Nation, worked closely with the team to develop a nuanced understanding of the complex and multifaceted history of Native American communities. Together, they organized a series of community outreach events where they shared their findings with indigenous leaders, scholars, and community members. One such event was held at the Flathead Reservation in Montana, where the team presented their research on the Anzick I genome and its connection to modern-day Native American populations. The presentation was met with great interest and enthusiasm from the community, who were eager to learn more about their ancestral heritage. Dr. Lapierre facilitated a discussion between the team and community members, which shed light on the cultural significance of the Anzick site and its importance in understanding the history of the region. The team also collaborated with the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes of the Flathead Nation to develop a comprehensive plan for the repatriation and reburial of the Anzick I remains. This process involved extensive consultation with tribal leaders, elders, and cultural experts who provided valuable insights into the traditional practices and protocols surrounding the treatment of ancestral remains. The team worked closely with the tribes to ensure that the repatriation and reburial process was conducted in a respectful and culturally sensitive manner. Meanwhile, Dr. Jennifer Raff continued her analysis of the skeletal remains from the Anzick site, using stable isotope analysis to reconstruct the diets and mobility patterns of the ancient individuals. Her research revealed that the Anzick I individual had a diet rich in protein from large game animals, such as bison and deer, which suggested a high level of mobility and hunting activity. The isotopic analysis also indicated that the individual had spent time in multiple regions, including the Great Plains and the Rocky Mountains, which supported the theory of a complex pattern of population movement and genetic exchange during the Paleoindian period. As the team's research progressed, they began to explore the implications of their findings for our understanding of the initial human migration to the Americas. Dr. Ripon Malhi, a geneticist from the University of Illinois, worked with the team to develop a more comprehensive picture of the genetic diversity of Native American populations. By analyzing the mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosome diversity of indigenous groups in the Americas, they were able to reconstruct the demographic history of the Paleoindian period and shed light on the processes that shaped the genetic landscape of the continent. The team's research also had significant implications for the field of archaeology, as it highlighted the importance of collaborative and community-based approaches to scientific inquiry. By working closely with indigenous communities and incorporating their knowledge and perspectives into the research process, the team was able to develop a more nuanced understanding of the complex and multifaceted history of Native American cultures. This approach also helped to build trust and foster greater cooperation between scientists and indigenous communities, which was essential for advancing our understanding of human history and promoting cultural preservation. As the team's findings continued to gain attention from the scientific community and the general public, they began to receive invitations to present their research at conferences and symposia around the world. Dr. Jennifer Raff was invited to present a keynote lecture at the annual meeting of the Society for American Archaeology, where she shared her research on the skeletal remains from the Anzick site and its implications for our understanding of Paleoindian demography. The lecture was well received by the audience, and it helped to stimulate further discussion and debate about the significance of the Anzick site and its contribution to our understanding of human history. The team's research also attracted the attention of scholars from other disciplines, including anthropology, history, and linguistics. Dr. Rosalind Lapierre was invited to contribute a chapter to a forthcoming book on the history of Native American cultures, where she discussed the cultural significance of the Anzick site and its importance in understanding the complex and multifaceted history of indigenous communities. The book, which was edited by a prominent historian of Native American studies, brought together contributions from scholars from diverse disciplines and provided a comprehensive overview of the latest research and thinking on the subject. As the book edited by the prominent historian of Native American studies neared publication, Dr. Rosalind Lapierre's chapter on the cultural significance of the Anzick site sparked intense interest among scholars and the general public alike. The chapter provided a nuanced exploration of the site's importance in understanding the complex and multifaceted history of indigenous communities, weaving together threads from archaeology, anthropology, and oral tradition. The book's release coincided with a surge in public engagement with Native American history and culture, fueled in part by the ongoing conversation about repatriation and reconciliation. Dr. Jennifer Raff's keynote lecture at the Society for American Archaeology meeting had also generated significant buzz, leading to invitations for her to speak at other prominent conferences, including the annual meeting of the American Anthropological Association. Her presentation, Reconstructing Paleoindian Demography Through Skeletal Analysis, was met with great enthusiasm as scholars and students alike were drawn to her meticulous research and insightful conclusions. The lecture helped to cement Dr. Raff's reputation as a leading expert in the field of bioarchaeology, and her work on the Anzick site remains a benchmark for future research. Meanwhile, the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes of the Flathead Nation continued to work closely with the research team to ensure that the repatriation and reburial of the Anzick I remains were conducted in accordance with tribal protocols and traditions. The tribe's cultural committee, led by elder and spiritual leader Francis Auld, played a vital role in guiding the process, which involved extensive consultation and collaboration with the research team, federal agencies, and other stakeholders. The repatriation ceremony, held on a crisp autumn morning in 2014, was attended by representatives from the tribes, the research team, and government officials, marking a significant milestone in the long journey to bring the Anzick I individual back to their ancestral homeland. The successful repatriation of the Anzick I remains also paved the way for further collaboration between the research team and Native American communities. Dr. Ripon Malhi, in partnership with the tribes, initiated a new project aimed at exploring the genetic diversity of indigenous populations in the region, using cutting-edge techniques to analyze ancient DNA samples from other archaeological sites. This research has the potential to shed new light on the migrations, interactions, and cultural exchanges that shape the history of Native American communities. And the team is working closely with tribal leaders and community members to ensure that the research is conducted in a responsible and culturally sensitive manner. As the Anzick site mystery gradually unraveled, the research team's findings continued to resonate within the academic community and beyond. The site's significance extended far beyond the confines of archaeology or anthropology, speaking to fundamental questions about human migration, cultural exchange, and the complex, intertwined histories of indigenous communities. As we close the chapter on the Anzick site mystery, we're left with a profound appreciation for the intricate tapestry of human history, woven from threads of migration, cultural exchange, and the enduring legacy of indigenous communities. The discovery of the 12,700-year-old remains has not only rewritten the narrative of America's past, but has also reminded us of the importance of respecting and honoring the cultural heritage of Native American communities. The Anzick site mystery stands as a testament to the power of interdisciplinary collaboration, community engagement, and the unrelenting pursuit of knowledge. Thank you for joining me throughout this historical journey. That's all for today's History with Herodotus. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, remember that, to understand the present, we must first understand the past.